Welcome to Vibin with Ashley Live. I'm your host, Ashley Live. Happy New Year, guys. New year, new show. And this is episode 209. So tonight's guest, legendary guitarist, songwriter, producer, Marlon McClain, originally from Portland, Oregon. Marlon, the magician, is a guitarist who began his career in the 70s with the band Pleasure. In 1984, he joined the legendary R&B funk group, the Dazz Band, and he's been a vital member for more than 3 decades. Outside of the band, he has collaborated with artists like En Vogue, Toni Braxton, George Clinton, and countless others. Marlon is also passionate about working with new artists. So thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. Marlon is in the house, and we're going to start this interview. Hi, Marlon.
Hey Ashley, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you so much for coming on my show. So, what's going on? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. All is well. Each day is a new day, so I'm excited that we're in the new year and we're working on new music. Dazz Band's going out on the road, performing a bunch of places, so it's good times.
Yeah. Do you have any New Year's resolutions that you want to share with us publicly?
You know, my New Year's resolution has always been pretty much the same every year, and that is just to be good to one another.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at life, is just, trying to be a good person, trying to have a good spirit, trying to spread love and positivity.
I love that. And I think it's amazing that you do the same thing every year because kindness, positivity, we all need that in the world. You know what I mean?
100%, yes.
It's like we can never have too much of it because we always need to remind somebody else, like, hey, you need to be a little bit nicer.
Yeah. And the part of, how can I say, just you as a person,
Yeah.
always be aware that, it's the little things that might affect somebody else, right? It's not always the big things. It could be just that little show of kindness that really affects a person's day. So always just try to be really super positive.
I love that. Yeah, you never know what someone's going through, and maybe a smile. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. I miss you. I love you. Those words are like so simple, but so important. I think a lot of people need to hear that, and the world needs more of that.
100%. 100%.
Awesome. Perfect start to the interview. So, as a self-taught musician, what inspired you to start playing the guitar when you were in 7th grade?
Well, I was really inspired by James Brown and the
Mhm.
sound of his records. And so um, I asked my mom to get me a guitar for Christmas,
Mhm.
and she did. And I just really just stayed in my bedroom and practiced and listened to records and basically taught myself how to play.
Mhm. I love that. So you're listening to James Brown's music and you're kind of just saying, "Oh, this note sounds like this," and "Oh, that was the wrong note." Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. So, there was something about how James Brown put together his songs and how he had his guitar players play on those records. And so if you listen to him, you can always hear how the guitar parts really stand out a lot in his music. And so
Mhm.
for some reason that always hit my ear. So I
Mhm.
wanted to learn how to play those parts. And so I would sit in my bedroom and just pick those parts out, and
Mhm.
eventually I got them where they sounded pretty good.
Yeah. So how many, I guess, hours would you say something like that takes? Like if you're learning an instrument from scratch, like are you in your room 2, 3 hours a day doing this, or is it like, what did that look like?
Yeah, it I would say at least that. At least, in other words, you would go to school, and then when you came back from school, instead of going out and playing with your friends, you would just be in your, at least for me, I would just be in my room practicing my guitar. And then it just so happened that in my neighborhood, uh, both myself and the bassist who in Pleasure, his name is Nathaniel Phillips,
Hmm.
and one of the guitarists name is Douglas Lewis. We all lived close to each other, and we all literally got guitars at the same time.
Oh,
And
cool.
so we would teach each other stuff. So Douglas might learn something from a record, and he would show it to Nate and I, and Nate might learn something from a record, and he would show it to Douglas and I. And so that's pretty much how we learned how to play.
I love that. You all taught yourselves, but you're all in this together and you're like, hey, listen to this song. I just learned how to do this. And you're all like collectively learning how to do these instruments. That's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh yeah, 100%. Definitely was a collective way of learning, and to me, with anything, the more you work at it, the better you get. So it's really having that part of focusing on doing it right,
Hmm.
not letting something else distract you. So the more you work at it, you can really tell that, wow, I'm getting better.
Yeah.
Those notes sound cleaner. Oh wow, now I can actually play that lick. So um, that's basically how we learned how to play.
That's awesome. And I like that you had creative people in your life that were doing the same thing. Because I think sometimes when you choose the path of being an artist, you talk to people that are not in that world and they look at you like you have three heads and they're like, what are you talking about? But when you speak to people that are in the music world, there's just an energy and synergy that you have. And you're like, you get it. I don't have to like over explain myself like I do to some other people in my life.
Right, that's so true. Yeah, you just make everybody has, how can I say, the same goal,
Right.
and that is to be good. Now, one thing I always talk about growing up in Portland, and I think the same thing kind of exists in places like Cleveland and other areas where you have big homes and big homes that have basements. And,
Mm-hmm.
and we always called in Portland with our bands was staying in the basement, and that is you would stay down in the basement and just practice and rehearse,
Mm-hmm.
listen to records, right? And everybody would try to get their part, and you would just stay down there and just work and work and work until you really had the songs down. And so I just think that part of the process just makes you a good musician.
Yeah, because you're practicing and you're figuring out what not to do and what to do. And once you find out how it actually works, you're like, I got this. It took a couple days, but like I'm getting it now.
100%. 100%. And like I said, I'm sure it's very similar to, like when you see a sports team out there practicing.
Yeah.
It's the same part of working on those plays and those drills and those different things that make that team really be excellent,
Hmm.
right? But you have to do that in order to execute.
Definitely. Yeah. You have to put the hours in. The more hours you put in, the better you'll be. Because if you're only doing like 1 hour a month, like you're not going to be a good musician. Like you have to put that work in every day. It's like going to the gym. If you want that six pack of abs, you got to put that work in.
Yeah, 100%. I would say, like, even now I still practice the Dazz Band songs before we play a show, and I've been playing them for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and I obviously know them. But I always say to myself, I want to be prepared before I hit the stage.
Mhm.
So, the leader of the band, Bobby, will send us the list of what we're going to play for that particular show, and I
Mhm.
will put it in a playlist, and I will just practice all those songs for that reason of I, for just really wanting to be good.
Yeah. I love that and I think that's important because yes, you know these songs inside and out. Like you've been playing these songs forever and ever, but you still want to make sure that like you got it.
Yeah, 100%. And you got it almost like it's second nature, where you don't
Mhm.
really have to think about it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. So, let's talk about the time that you were the guitarist and co-founder of Pleasure. How did that portion of your career influence the rest of your career?
I would say it was a big influence. We all grew up together in Portland, um, in a neighborhood called the Albina neighborhood, and
Mhm.
so we literally all knew each other. And the first band before it was turned into Pleasure was called the Soul Masters, and so we all were together and we played at different clubs and college shows and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
once again, we were a type of band that we like to discover music, so we played all types of music, right? Um, and I think that whole experience with Pleasure and making the albums that I made with Pleasure definitely gave me a how can I say it, a certain way of looking at things. So when I joined the Dazz Band, and Bobby Harris and I really came together, the leader of the band,
Mhm.
I was able to contribute to what the Dazz Band was doing, which I think was awesome.
Yeah. It's like you kind of needed pleasure to figure out all these things, and then you were like, and then the Dazz Band wants me.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you know the story of me joining the Dazz Band, but it's a great one in regards to how people are connected to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So how I joined the Dazz Band was Reggie Andrews, who was the producer of the Dazz Band. Him and I became friends early on during the Pleasure days.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a group called Karma, right? And we played on some shows together, and we always stayed in touch with each other. And
Cool.
so I decided to move down to Los Angeles. And once I moved down there, I called up Reggie and I said, Reggie, I'm in Los Angeles now. Do you have any studio work? Because I came down to be a studio guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and he said, well, Marlon, I don't have any work right now, but I need for you to call this number right now. And so he gave me Bobby's number and I called up Bobby and Bobby said, look, our guitarist just left the band. I know who you are. Do you want to join the band? And I was like saying, wow, this is like crazy. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And it was like no audition, nothing. He said, I know who you are. Do you want to join the band? And so literally I moved to LA and then I was flying to Cleveland
Mm-hmm.
via the Dazz Band.
Amazing.
Isn't that amazing? But it was
Yeah.
all because of the connection with Reggie Andrews, right? And it just
Yeah.
shows you how that works in regards to music, and it's almost like a full circle.
That's amazing because you go to LA. Now, okay, so you moved to LA. Did you have work or did you just kind of say, I want to move to LA and just be in that scene?
Yeah, no, I moved to LA because I was good friends with Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire, and he told me that he said, "Well, Marlon, if you move to LA, I'm gonna start working on my solo album.
Mm-hmm.
I would like for you to play on it, but I'll prefer if you're here in LA." So I use that as kind of like inspiration
Yeah.
to move to LA. So that's how that worked out.
So it didn't work out with Maurice.
Oh no, I played on Maurice's album.
You did, but you
Oh yeah, I
had
played
that.
on his solo album that he put out. Yes.
Okay, because the thing is, I was wondering where because you were in Portland and then you came down to LA. So and then you got that call and you spoke to Bobby. So it's just kind of cool how everything happened.
Yeah, it was like I look at a lot of things that things are meant to be, and you just never know. But a lot of things that happen are meant to be, and I looked at that particular situation that happened was it was meant to be. So in other words, the part of Maurice saying, "Hey, Martin, if you come down to LA, you can play on my album," and
Yeah.
that gave me the motivation to do that. And then once I got there, I called up Reggie, and
Mm-hmm.
then he put me on the phone with Bobby, and that led
Yeah.
me to be in the Dazz Band, which was a band that I had already was admiring.
Right.
It was already a band that I knew about, that I liked their songs, I thought they were great, and so it was kind of like a natural thing that happened that was turned into a very awesome event.
Yeah. And it's cool because you kind of do need to be in a city like LA for the opportunity to come because when you're in those smaller cities, people are like, "Oh, well, you got to get to this city in order for things to click." And then you get to LA and you're just like, "Well, this was where I was meant to be," right?
Yeah, yeah, or like I said, just a part of all of it. It might have still happened in Portland if I would have called up Reggie, right?
Yeah.
But it was like all of the synergy that happened because I had moved to LA and I knew Reggie was in LA. So I said, I need to call him to
Yeah.
look for some work. Right. And so it was
Yeah.
all of that made it all happen.
Hmm. Love it. So awesome. So talk to me about what you enjoy most about playing live shows with the Dazz Band.
I always love the part of feeling the energy of the crowd.
Hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether or not we're playing at a club or if we're playing at a big arena show. To me, that part of how the crowd reacts to the songs and the feeling that you get back in real time
Right.
is what I always love about performing live.
Hmm. And your shows are so high energy to begin with. Like everybody's on their feet dancing and singing. And it's just, I mean, it's just a straight up party.
Yeah, but you really feel, just to me the energy that you feel from your fans or from the audience,
Yeah.
whether they're fans of you from back in the day or just now discovering you,
Hmm.
it's always, I don't know how to say it, but it just always gives you a certain type of feeling that's really warm. And
Yeah.
so I'll give you an example. Like there was one time at Dazz Man, we went over to Japan and we were playing at this place called the Live Inn. And
Hmm.
it was like this club in Tokyo that was it was almost like a cavern in a way, and the place
Mhm.
was packed.
Yeah.
I mean, packed. And those people over there started singing our songs, you know, and you're just like looking at it saying, that is so amazing that we're here in Tokyo and the
Yeah.
whole crowd is singing Let It Whip Back to You, right?
Yeah.
Because you're saying that, you naturally have the language difference, right? Because we of course couldn't speak Japanese. So, we're saying to ourselves, wow, they're singing Let It Whip to us in English, and they are with us, right? The
Yeah.
power of it was like really, really strong. So that's the stuff I'm talking about. It's always amazing when that happens. And
Yeah. And
you just really feel the energy from the crowd.
yeah, and like you said, they don't speak English, but they know these words to the
Yeah.
song, and that song "Let It Whip," and just the massive success that that song has had, and it's just got to be so wild because you're like, oh my gosh, it's just so cool that they know this song, and maybe they come up to you afterwards and they say something, and you're just like, I don't know what you said, but they can sing the song to you.
Yeah, it just knows that you've made that connection, right? And that connection is real because they've taken the time to learn how to sing that song,
Right.
right? Because think
Hmm.
about it, they had to go through that process too of actually learning, figuring out, just
Right.
like I'm talking about figuring out how to play the guitar. They had to figure that out, right?
Definitely.
And so
Yeah.
when you feel that and it's a crowd of people doing it all at once, that's an amazing feeling.
That's so cool. So, balancing your role in the Dazz Band and then working with newer talents like your niece and your son Brando, can you talk about a memorable experience you had that influenced your music?
Uh, well, I would say, it's, I've always loved working with other people,
Hmm.
and so whether it's people like Jeff Lorber or Kenny G or En Vogue,
Hmm.
or now my son Brando, and my niece Whitney, and then I also work with these guys called the Beat Freaks over in the UK,
Hmm.
and an up and coming artist called, his name is OBA. I love that process of giving advice and seeing what happens from giving that advice, right? Because you don't necessarily want them to be like you. You want them to
Right.
be their own person, but you want to be able to give them advice that you hope will help them on their journey.
Hmm.
So I love the part of watching the process of them figuring who they are and watching their journey go to the next level.
Hmm. So, working with all these different types of new artists, are there any other types of music or things that they've taught you about music in the industry?
Oh, 100%. The one thing I love about music in general is that, man, you can learn something every day. You learn something new if you're really paying attention,
Definitely.
right? And what I mean by that is the part of how people craft songs now is
Hmm.
definitely different from how we crafted songs in the 70s and 80s,
Right.
right? Um, and so if you pay attention and listen, you're going to learn some things. You're going to learn some things in regards to how they people are writing melodies,
Hmm.
how they're putting their music together, all the part, and what they're talking about, right?
Hmm.
And if you really pay attention, then you're going to always learn something new. So yes, I think I learn something new daily.
Yeah. What is your take on AI and people typing certain things and using like the Beatles song, right? Like the Beatles came out with a new song and we're like, how did this happen?
I mean, I think AI is fine as long as it's used in a creative way where they're not actually stealing from somebody. And what I mean by that is taking from somebody that you clearly know that that's what that is, right? So in other words,
Hmm.
when they were talking about how they made the one Drake song and it sounded just like Drake, and when they put it up there, people actually thought it was Drake.
Yep.
That kind of stuff I think is not right.
Right.
But if you want to use it creatively, no different from, I look at that when was, I think it was maybe, I don't know, the mid 70s when the first little drum machine came out,
Hmm.
and we started using it to incorporate it in certain things that we were doing on record. And then after that, it became even more involved where they made really intense drum machines,
Hmm.
and people really used them as a part of making their production.
Yeah.
Well, you would say, well, is that, taken away from an actual drummer? Well, in reality, the producer figured out how to make that thing sound a certain way where it sounded really good, where people liked how it sounded, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so to me, all this stuff just constantly evolves, and you have to just see where it's going to go. And I
Hmm.
just think as long as they're not going to use it, as long as somebody does not use it to really steal something from another artist, then to me it's fine. So if you use it in a creative way that helps you with your stuff, right? And
Yeah.
it's really totally creative, then I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think it's a cool tool, but for people to rely solely on it and just be like, hey, I need lyrics for this song, and then like AI would write the whole song for them, like that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's once again that means you're not, like I said, that means you're kind of stealing opposed to really,
Yeah.
right, using it as a tool that's
Hmm.
going to help you do something, right?
Hmm. Definitely. So you mentioned this earlier. You've worked with countless people: En Vogue, Toni Braxton, Charlie Wilson, Maurice White, countless others. What do you enjoy most about collaborating with other artists?
Um, what I like the most is really, once again, feeling what they're feeling,
Mhm.
and trying to me, whenever you work with somebody else, all you're really trying to do is help them achieve their goal of, making a good song, or if you're in the studio with them, making a good record, making a good
Right.
record that's going to come out. And so I've always liked that process of just being in the studio, or if it's a songwriting session, just being a part of, I don't know, just part of the process, that at the end, once you get to the song being complete, that it
Yeah.
just sounds really great, right?
Hmm.
And all artists have different ways of achieving that goal. So to me, I've always liked the process, and you always learn different things from the different artists that you work with.
Hmm. And who are some of your favorite artists that you've had like an incredible collaboration with? Like you got in the room with them, or you just had this synergy and you were like, this is really easy. Like this is just flowing out of the both of us.
Right, right. Well, writing, I would say writing with Bobby Harris, the leader of the Dazz Band. Him and I have always had a certain way of working on music that's always flowed really, really super easy.
Hmm.
I've always loved that. I've always had the same type of way of doing songs too with Jeff Lorber.
Hmm.
He's awesome. And then I was talking about this just the other day, and I was talking about it with actually Denzel Foster from Foster McElroy, and I was telling him how when he first brought myself into working with him and his partner Tommy McElroy, and they were producing all the En Vogue stuff. Um, I learned so much from those guys because they had a different way of producing,
Hmm.
and they were more of, at that time, that's when hip hop was really coming in. Their way of looking at it was way different from how I looked at it. So I
Yeah.
became like a student,
Hmm.
even though they wanted me to play on their songs, I became like a student, just really learning that part of the process. And I was thanking him about, man, I said, you don't even know how much I learned from you guys.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so I would say he would him and Tommy would be another person, even though they were not actually artists, they were more producers, songwriters. I
Yeah.
just learned a lot from them.
Yeah. And it's cool when you're collaborating with these people, they're giving their ideas, you're giving your ideas, and you're like, oh, I never knew I could do this. Like you were there and you're like, this is, I feel like I'm in class right now. Like this is like the best class I could ever have taken.
100%, yes. And that's always, it's always good to be open, because
Yeah.
the more you open yourself up, the more you're gonna learn.
Right. And the more creative your projects sound, because if you're only thinking of something in one way, but then you work with other artists, you're like, oh, the reason I do this now is because of that interaction I had 5 years ago, or when I was doing this. And you're just like, and that changed my whole perspective on how I write music.
100%. I
Mhm.
like what you just said. That's very true.
So, having been a part of the music industry for decades, what changes have you observed over the years as far as trends and the industry itself?
Well, obviously, the part of, now we're dealing with streaming, which has
Hmm.
obviously been a big change in the industry from when we were first in it, and it started with, vinyl to, you know cassettes to CDs
Yeah.
and now to streaming. So that's obviously been a big thing. And I would say social media has definitely been a big thing where that has become like one of the main platforms to where, the artists have to communicate with their fans and try to get new fans.
Hmm.
So that has definitely been different. And I would say this year, at least for us with the Dazz Band in particular, TikTok played like just a whole new role in regards to how the song "Let It Whip" got discovered. It
Hmm.
started from this artist, Big X the Plug, who is a rapper who used "Let It Whip," used a sample of "Let It Whip" and made his own song called "Whip It."
Hmm.
And he put that song up on TikTok, and man, there were some people that discovered it and started
Yeah.
doing TikToks to it, and that caused like just a whole commotion where it was like so big.
Hmm.
I remember calling up Bobby saying, "Bobby, you're not going to believe this, but the song is exploding on TikTok." All the way to when it went on the TikTok chart. So it shows you that part of how technology and social media really can make a difference with music.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the evolution of TikTok. So, did you know anything about TikTok before he sampled the song?
Oh yeah, I've always, how can I say, even though I may not understand stuff, I always try to check new stuff out, right? So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that I have uh daughters that are always telling me about new things. So
Yeah.
my youngest daughter told me about TikTok early on. So I was
Hmm.
on there, but I wasn't really on there trying to be seen. I was on there just checking out stuff, right? So
Hmm.
so yeah, so when it happened, actually when it first started taking off, a friend of mine had sent me a text message about it. And he basically said, like, well, look, Marlon, you're not gonna believe this, but you should just go with it. I
Yeah.
said, what are you talking about? He said, man, this Big X the Plug just sampled Whip It and the song is gonna blow up. And
Yeah.
he was totally correct.
Hmm.
It just had its moment where it started on TikTok and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
To the point where, you know, the band's original version started getting more TikToks than his version after they discovered the original.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Yeah. It's amazing because for those of you who don't know, there is a whip it challenge, and people all over TikTok are dancing to Let It Whip. And I love these videos because this could possibly be the first time someone's heard this song, right? Like, because
Correct.
it's viral. And they're like, oh, this is going viral. I need to know about this song. And then we have people 15, 16 years old that are getting to know the Dazz Band. And I think that's so cool when music is introduced to a different demographic of people. And then with the TikTok end of year charts, the song was on the end of the year chart. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, we looked at it as being so fortunate that that happened to the band because just like you were saying, people who had not heard that song all of a
Hmm.
sudden had heard it and they were loving it and they were reposting it and doing their own dances to it. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
Did you have any standout videos from the Whip It Challenge that like you're just like mesmerized or it just sticks with you and you're just like, that is pretty rad?
I would say there were some of them, and especially the ones where they were doing the how I said they would come together as a group, almost
Yeah.
whether it was like a fraternity
Uh-huh.
or 4 or 5 different people, and they'd have a whole routine. You
Hmm.
like look at it and say, "Wow!" Once again, those people practiced and worked on that for a long time
Yeah.
before they actually did the video.
Hmm.
Because it was so put together, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of those particular videos, I was just amazed that they actually took the time to do that, and
Yeah.
it just shows you how much they were into the song.
Yeah. Well, the song is amazing. Whether okay, so I wasn't born when the song came out, but as I told you earlier, we had the album in my house, so I didn't know it was the Dazz Band at the time because I was very young. But we used to play "Let It Whip" continuously in my house, and we would dance around my living room. So I have memories dancing that song when I was growing up, and so I'm so happy that there are so many other kids that they can have the same kind of reaction that I did when I was young to this song.
Right, right. Yeah, it's such a great song. And
Such a great,
you can't help but like it only because it just makes you feel good.
yeah, such a feel good song. And like you were saying earlier, like kindness and being nice to each other, and just like when you put on that song, you're smiling, you're dancing, like that is the perfect hype song.
Right. I agree 100%. It is a awesome song.
So I'd like to talk about your releases. Funky Fridays Volume 1 that came out in 2020, and then Volume 2, which was released in 2022. So talk to me about the inspiration and the creative process behind these projects.
Well, basically how the whole Funky Fridays releases came together was I used to come into my office, which is my office and a studio, and
Mm-hmm.
I would literally just turn on uh, my laptop or my iPhone
Mm-hmm.
and pick up my guitar, and whatever I was feeling, I would play and then post it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I gotta have a name for it. So I would always start posting on Friday. So this is Funky Fridays, right? And I
Yeah.
really did it once again, just to my way of spreading love and positivity.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was this: there was some of my Facebook friends would be saying like, Marlon, that guitar part is great. You need to make a song out of it,
Yeah.
right? And so over time, that eventually led me to actually take those ideas and turn them into songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I released my first Funky Fridays, and then I started working on a second one. Um, and a lot of it is, like I said, I love that part of being able to bounce off of people with ideas. So I would, with certain
Yeah.
guitar parts, I would send them to whether it was Jeff Lorber or to some other people that I work with, and just see what they thought, and they would add parts, and we would just send ideas back and forth, and I would just turn them into songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how the Funky Fridays series started.
I love that. That's so cool, because when I was listening to the albums earlier, I was like, these are so these are so awesome. It's funky, feel good songs that, like Fridays. Like I love Funky Friday because funky is always good and Friday is always good. So
Right.
just it rolls off your tongue very easily.
Yeah, and like I said, and I love it because it literally just started out of me just doing it naturally, right?
Yeah.
There was nothing about it where I was saying to myself at first, I'm gonna make an album or anything like that. It was really just I wanted to post something to Facebook
Yeah.
just as a part of just me picking up the guitar and seeing what was gonna come out.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you used it as a release and you were just having fun with it. And then
Yeah.
you were like, oh, I'm actually going to record these songs and put them on an album. And then people can go back to them. Like, I think that's a really cool thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it really turned out awesome. Um, I know that the other day I had a fan that hit me up and said, well, Marlon, when are you gonna do the Funky Fridays 3? And I had to say, I'm not sure. I have to kind of, wait to get some more inspiration, but hopefully I'll do another one, maybe
Yeah.
towards the end of the year or something like that.
That was actually going to be my next question. And when are we getting the third edition? But
Right.
that's totally fine. I mean, I think you need to let that creativity and inspiration come to you. Like it's not something that you're like, oh, this is going to happen next month or something. Like it's going to come when it's going to come, and when you feel it is when we get it.
100%. And that's exactly how I look at it. So hopefully the inspiration will start coming. Right now, Bob and I have been working on some new music. And I know he's been working on some new music with some other people. So the Dazz Band stuff, I'm hoping that will come out,
Yeah.
sometime in 2024. And so
Nice.
I'm really excited about all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're always excited to hear new music from the Dazz Band. So it's going to be a killer 2024 for you guys.
100%. Super excited.
So in May of last year, your song Funk Not Fight with Bootsy Collins was released. Can you share some highlights from that collaboration and how it felt to check that off of your bucket list working with him?
Yeah, Bootsy was always a person that I wanted to work with. I had met him once,
Hmm.
kind of like in passing, but I didn't know him, but we are Facebook friends.
Yeah.
And he was one of those persons that would notice some of my Funky Friday post.
Yeah.
And one day I had done a post and he said, "Well, Marlon, I like that. Will you send that to me?"
Yeah.
And so I sent him the guitar idea, and he said, "Well, Marlon, I'm gonna work on something." And he said, I'll let you know once I have something."
Mm-hmm.
So it was like maybe a year later, he sent me, his initial idea for Funk Not Fight. And obviously it sounded great. And he said, "Well,
Yeah.
Marlon, I want you to add some more parts." So I sent him a couple more guitar parts. And then it was like uh, maybe 3 or 4 months after that,
Mm-hmm.
he said, "Well, Marlon, I think I have the whole song together. I'm gonna send you what I have." And when he sent it to me, I was like, God, I was just blown away. It's
Yeah.
just so, he's once again, he's obviously super, super creative.
Mm-hmm.
And he had put together his whole concept of, it not only being a song, but having the song be a part of this campaign that he started, where he wants to, do stuff in schools and have people, once again, be loving opposed to fighting, right? So that's that
Mm-hmm.
whole concept of Funk Not Fight. And I think he did an awesome job.
Yeah. And it's such a good message too, because like you said, you took all these beautiful elements, the guitar, Bootsy, him working on it, you working on it, going back and forth. And it's like, we're all here for unity, peace, love, kindness, happiness, and good times.
Yeah, 100%. And and
Mhm.
and let that be the message, opposed to the message of, anything that's real negative, and us not wanting to lift each other up.
Yeah. I think music is one of those things where you come together and you're just able to see everything in a positive light because when you listen to certain music, it just takes you to another place.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the awesome part about music. That's
Mhm.
and like I said, it doesn't matter what type of music that you like, whether it's R&B, funk, whether it's symphonic, whether it's country, whether it's jazz.
Yeah.
It will always give that part of you that is able to take you somewhere else, right?
Right.
And to me, that's the beauty of it, because we all need that. We all need that part of being able to, kind of have different experiences, right? And having the part of, if we're going through something, you
Hmm.
put on a song, and that song makes you feel better about, you know, yourself, or it makes you want to, be relaxed,
Hmm.
whatever it is. that-
Right.
I think music, definitely has that ability for people, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, it's such a healing thing and it can bring out so many emotions. Like you can hear a certain song and be like, "Oh my gosh, I remember that song was really popular when I was in high school and I remember sitting at my desk in math class and that song was on the radio." And like, you know what I mean? Like it's crazy how when you hear certain songs, you can think of where you were, maybe certain smells, the people you were with. Like I think it's just wild how it can transport us to different times in our life.
Yeah, I give you one example, and that is, there was one time I was over in South Africa playing with Jeff Lorber and Gerald
Mhm.
Albright, um, and Kirk Whalum, and I had taken a cab from the hotel to get to the where we were going to at the performance where we were performing at. And in the car, the guy was playing, some jazz and R&B music, and he said to me, he goes, "You don't really understand how the music that you guys put out got us through
Mhm.
apartheid." And I was saying, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yes, serious." And
Yeah.
it was like one of those moments where you're saying, like, wow, you know, your music was that impactful that it helped some people in that way, which is
Mhm.
totally from what you did, what I wasn't thinking he was going to say to me, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so powerful because like you said, like you could be going through something crazy and maybe you played this album for 6 months during that difficult time and now you're like that song got me out of that crazy time that I was in.
Yeah, that got me through something that was really, really, tough for me, but that music helped me get through that period.
Mhm. So powerful. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you have people come up to you all the time and tell you the impact that the music has had on their life.
Yeah, once again, I think the great part about social media is that people can connect to you more so than how they used to before. Before you might have people that would send you letters and stuff like that to your management office or whatever. But now you have people that will become your friends and will like give you a DM or some type of message on Facebook, and they'll
Yeah.
really tell you how your music has affected them, which is awesome.
Yeah. And that's powerful because I think, like you said before, back in the day, you had to write a letter and you didn't even know if that artist got that letter. But now with Facebook, with TikTok, you're able to get in touch with people in a way. Like I could post a video and talk about your song and tag you, and then you're like, "Oh, Ashley, like I love that video that you were talking about my song." And then we get connected through that. So it's just
Right.
really wild because it's a worldwide thing where you could get messages from all over the world, or you could see somebody doing like the Whip It challenge overseas, and you're like, this is so crazy. This is like international.
Right. 100%. Yes. And so yeah, so it's great to be connected that
Yeah.
way, right?
Hmm.
Because once again, it's more in real time. Even like what we're doing right now is in real
Yeah.
time, and so I like that part of it.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. I think it truly is wild that you and I can be on different coasts and we're having this interview. Like I talk about it all the time, but I'm just truly amazed that the power of social media and the power of connecting is just so, it's just so amazing and happens all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
Hmm. So, what advice would you give to aspiring musicians?
Well, definitely, follow your heart in
Hmm.
regards to, your whether it's whatever art you're putting out there, right?
Yeah.
Um, and to not get discouraged, because this is one business where it's easy to be discouraged, and it's
Hmm.
easy to get discouraged when once again, like what we're talking about, social media, where you might put out a video or whatever and it doesn't get as many likes that you like,
Yeah.
or you're not getting as many followers as you think you should have.
Hmm.
um, to me, putting out music and getting your career going is all about the process, and sometimes it takes time to get to certain levels. And
Hmm.
so I would say that if you really believe in yourself and really believe in what you're doing, to just stay the course and just keep working at it.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you'll get a break, right?
Hmm.
Sooner or later, more people will discover you.
Right.
Sooner or later, you might post something that all of a sudden gets a lot of traction. One
Hmm.
of the best examples that I can give to that is this guy Paul Russell and the song "Boo Thing." I don't know if
Hmm.
you know that song I'm talking about.
I don't know that song.
Oh, you should check that song.
Okay, I will.
It's called "Give a Little Boo Thing." Da, 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 da.
Okay.
If you Google Paul Russell, you'll understand what I'm saying. But anyway,
Okay.
he was a guy that was working a job,
Hmm.
and he's also a songwriter and an artist, but he was not really breaking through. And
Mm.
he went home one day from his job, and he sampled the Emotion song "Best of My Love"
Mm.
and came up with the song called "Boo Thing" and did this little clip of him singing the song and posted it on TikTok.
Mm.
The song was not cleared. He did not get the sample cleared. And he says that, like, hey, I haven't cleared this sample, but I've made this song. Check it out. Well, same thing. For some reason, people loved his clip and they started making TikToks to the sound. And the
Mm.
song got so big on TikTok that a label reached out to him. He was able to get the song cleared. He
Hmm.
made a real song to it, an entire song, put it up, and he's on, like, I think, like, maybe now he's like maybe number 6 on Apple.
Wow.
He went from, like I said, working his regular job to he was in the Macy's Day Thanksgiving parade.
Amazing.
all in this all in this span of time. You see what I mean?
Wow.
But it was
I mean,
all the part of, once again, instead of him being like, wow, nobody really likes me, he
mhm.
came home from his job and made that song, made that little clip of a song. It wasn't even the entire song, and
Yeah,
posted it. And that turned into the magic that he needed to get his career started.
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's
And
the part, that's actually the part that I actually love about social
mhm.
media, is stories like that that are real stories. You
Yeah.
have a guy who was trying to be known as an artist, but he still was working his regular job because he wasn't paying his bills as an artist.
Hmm.
And he decided, like, you know what, I have this idea in my head, so I'm gonna record it and post it on TikTok and see what happens.
Yeah.
And everything worked for him. You know.
Yeah. And I think with social media now, do you think it's easier to do the craft than it was back in the day, or what are your thoughts
Oh,
on that?
I still think it still is tough. I think
You
it's
do?
what I think the thing about, how can I say it, I always tell artists that, to me, social media is no different from when we were back in the day. Say, for instance, whether you talk about Pleasure or the Dazz Band, you would be doing a show,
Hmm.
let's just say in your hometown, so Portland and Cleveland, and you'd be doing a show at a club, and the promoter would say, "Hey, here's some posters. I need for you to go out and put those posters up
Hmm.
around your neighborhood so people know that you're playing at my club. And if you do it good and do enough of that, servicing and putting on telephone posts and all that stuff,
Yeah.
you might get a crowd."
Right.
Well, social media to me is the same thing,
Right.
and that is, you have to post something to let people know that you're out there,
Hmm.
right? And so the ones that do it and they keep doing it and they keep building, sooner or later you make a connection, right? And if fans like what you're doing,
Of
your
course.
your music or your art, then they start to become fans, and you just
Hmm.
keep building that. So it's really super grassroots, right?
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
difference is that whenever you post something, you do have the ability to know that it's going worldwide, opposed to when we were doing it back in the day, putting up
Yeah.
posters, it was just local. But the
Hmm.
concept is still the same, and that is, you have to let people know that you were there. If you don't, then somebody they're gonna go see somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So you have to hustle. You have to have your hustle on, right? So to me, the part of all that stuff is getting the artist to buy into that part, because it's, in a lot of ways, it can be very frustrating
Hmm.
when, like I say, you do post something and you don't get a bunch of likes, right?
Yeah.
So you have that part of saying, wow, nobody really likes me, but that may not be true. It may just be that you haven't posted enough,
Hmm.
get that algorithm going for you, where more people see you.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. I think people do need to post a lot nowadays because you just don't know. Like you could say, "Oh, I'm going to post a cover a day," right? And then you've done it for, I don't know, 100 days, and you're like, "Oh, no one's really commenting or liking it." But then maybe the next video after that, somebody sees it and they're like, "Wow, this person is putting the work in. I like what they're doing. They have good energy." Like maybe collaboration comes from that or something. I think it's just really cool. And it's just like you just have to like put that hustle in.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I said, instead of you going around putting posters on telephone posts,
Yeah.
you're making a post on Instagram or TikTok, and
Hmm.
you're trying to get people to see it, right? And
Yeah.
so but you still have to put the time into it, and it has to be, how can I say it, the thing that the thing that doesn't change, no matter what you do, is it has to be quality. It
Hmm.
has to be good. So in other words, it just can't be anything. It
Yeah.
has to be something where people say, that's, man, that's engaging,
Hmm.
and I like it. So I'm gonna, like with the Paul Russell example. In other words, how he had, like I said, and check it out later after you get off the show, you'll see what I
Yeah.
mean. But
Yeah.
he had made a when he had posted his video, how he did it was so engaging,
Hmm.
right? And it made you like the song, which in turn people said, okay, we not only like this little clip, because I think it was only 15 or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Um, what we not only like the clip that he did, we're going to take his sound and make our own video to it. So that's
Yeah.
what got it started. But
Yeah.
it was his first video that was so engaging that made you have that reaction,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's the part of it that I try to tell most artists that you have to be a part of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to be discovered. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you work at it and the more you figure those things out, the more you're going to make that connection.
Yeah. And TikTok is where it's at. Like there is so much going on TikTok, and people are really pouring their heart out. And I know what a champion you are for other artists on social media. Like I see you post stuff all the time and you're like, yeah, check this person out. Like this person has this new single, or I saw this. Like, and I love that you do that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I really am. I mean, even though I'm in the business, I'm actually how can I say it? I always try to be a fan, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I hear something that I think sounds good, I'm gonna repost it. Today I reposted something that my wife has sent me, and
Mm-hmm.
that was Jelly Roll doing the part of calling his mom to talk
Yeah.
about he just was nominated for a Grammy, and you could tell like when I saw the clip, it was like wow, the emotion that this man had just call up his mom, let him know like wow, I'm going to the Grammys, mom.
Yeah.
And how he said it, you could tell he was full of so much emotion
Mm-hmm.
of knowing that he had struggled to get to the point where he had got to where he is now,
Yeah.
where he is known, but yet his most biggest thing he wanted to do was let her know that he was nominated for a Grammy. Like, hey, I'm becoming successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just awesome. So stuff like that always touches me. So I'm gonna always post,
Yeah.
stuff that I'm not involved with, but I just think it's amazing.
Yeah. And I like what you said about being a fan, right? Because there's so much music out there. Like there's so much music out there, and it's just like how do you know where to find it? And I think social media is one of those places, because back in the day you had to hear a song on a radio or go to a live local show, where now you see music from all over the world, and you might see a video and the person's based in Thailand and you're like, that person is amazing, and social media is
100%.
to show them to me.
Yeah, to me, what's great about Spotify and Apple and all the streaming services, it is that it really is a place for discovery,
Yeah.
right? And so you literally and you get to hear stuff from all around the world. To me, that's why you see where you've had such an explosion from
Hmm.
other artists being from other countries becoming really successful worldwide because it's the part of having that platform to put out music
Yeah.
and be discovered, right?
Hmm.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's
And so
so
yeah,
powerful.
so I really listen to when New Music Friday. I'm like one of the first guys that's going to be up there seeing what's new, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important.
Discovering what's out there.
Yeah. So are you on Spotify? Like, do you get the Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify?
Oh yes, I'm like once again I'm a fan, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to hear what's out there, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, and then I'll make my own playlist to stuff that I discovered that I really like. So
Hmm.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love.
I was like a Bad Bunny fan before. I'm not gonna say I was before he blew up, but I definitely was hearing his stuff before he became the real big, huge Bad Bunny.
Yeah.
So to me, that's that type of stuff that I'm talking about that Spotify and all the streaming services have made possible.
Yeah. I love Spotify because I love Mondays when I get my Discover Weekly playlist, and I love Fridays because then I have Release Radar, and it's like I know the new music that's coming out on Friday, but then on Monday it's like, Ashley, because you listen to all these things, we think you like this, and I'm like, oh, you know me so well.
Right, that's the algorithm. You're totally correct.
It's powerful.
It's very powerful, no question. And to me, Spotify, like to the streaming services in general, I look at it that it's back in the day we had um albums, right? And you had
Hmm.
stations that played the album cuts.
Yeah.
Those were the FM stations, right? They played
Hmm.
at that time. They were all album orientated stations, and they would find the songs that weren't necessarily the songs that were the singles, but they would find songs that they liked that they would play, and that's how
Hmm.
a lot of groups got popular.
Yeah.
from that process. So I look at Spotify in that way. And that is, you have the chance of discovering stuff that you would never really hear on the radio,
Yes. Yep.
on top 40 radio. But
Hmm.
those songs could be awesome songs, right? And
Yeah.
they could be from somebody from, Africa, somebody from South Korea, somebody from Portugal, wherever. And so I love that part of streaming.
Yeah. It's amazing and beautiful.
100%.
So, Marlon, outside of music and touring, because I know it's such a huge part of your life, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
You know, I wish I had a bunch of hobbies, but really what I like to do is go ride my bike. And so, I like to put in my earbuds
Mhm.
so I can have the cancellation, not necessarily listen to any music,
Yeah.
and just go on my bike and ride and just kind of chill out, for an hour or so and just, kind of relax and not think about anything. And so that's I would say that's really my biggest hobby.
And I love that because you're doing something positive for yourself. Like you're being active, you're getting out in nature, and you're just letting the wind take you where it's going to.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So,
that's what I like to do.
so when you're on a bike ride, is it like a 20-minute thing? Is it an hour? Or does it like just kind of depend on your mood?
I usually try to ride for close to an hour,
Hmm.
just so I can get, some exercise along with some peace of mind. And so
Yeah.
that's usually for about an hour.
Love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Marlon, that's all the time we have for this evening. But before I let you go, do you have any final words for the room?
Well, I like to say thank you for having me on. I know you're going to have some of the other guys in the band
Yeah.
on from the
Yeah.
Dazz Band. So I think that's awesome. So it's going to be kind of like a Dazz Band series in a way. So
Love that.
yeah, I think that's amazing that our manager figured that out with you, and you guys came up with this idea to do that. So yeah, so I want to thank you for having me on. I think that's amazing, and you know I'm just want to say to all the fans out there to just keep listening to music and keep loving it and keep supporting artists that you like.
So, how can the beautiful people watching this show right now that love you, Marlon, how can they support you? What can they do?
Well, of course, you can always go to dazzband.com to see what the band is doing,
Hmm.
see what we're doing with our shows and stuff like that. And like I said, I know that we're working on new music, so hopefully we'll have that coming out this year.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. And then you can always find me on Instagram and find me on Facebook. And,
Hmm.
you know, like I said, I'm a little bit on TikTok, but not that big. So you don't have to find me there. But those other places, you'll see that I'm posting on a regular basis.
Awesome. Well, Marlon, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on my show. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You dropped lots of gems tonight, and I'm very excited to see what 2024 brings for you.
Hey, thank you so much, Ashley. It's
You're
awesome.
so welcome. Enjoy the rest of your night and be kind. Sh- do things with love. Stream, listen, and go see the Dazz Band. They're on tour and they have new music coming out this year. So stay tuned, guys. And Marlon, thank you again. Have a beautiful evening. We'll
All
see you
right,
guys
thank
next
you.
time.
All right,
Guys.
bye bye.